And what I find is, they look at security and IT in general often as just a cost center, just another line item. And a lot of companies are getting forced into implementing some of these security things begrudgingly.
Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. This is Darren Pulsford, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On today's episode, Embracing Cybersecurity Culture, with author and founder of Stimulus Technologies, Nathan Whitacre. Nathan, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure to be here, Darren.
Hey, we had just a small conversation, and you started going on about cybersecurity and management. And I said, whoa, wait, we got to capture this for the podcast. But before we start talking about, cybersecurity and leadership in cybersecurity, my audience loves to hear people's backstories. Just like any superhero, every superhero has their alternate identity or their backstory. What is it for Nathan? What's Nathan's backstory?
Oh, it's a long one. I started with computers when I was 4 years old when my parents bought an Atari 800 XL. And
awesome.
my brother and I used to play on that. I mean, it was a crazy system. It would boot up to a prompt to start coding BASIC. And you had to know some programming to even use this computer. And my brother and I, subscribed to some magazines back in the day. And, even at a young age, I enjoyed, because I wanted to play video games, I enjoyed coding, and learned over the next 10 years on that device. And, I just loved computers. Started a BBS when I was like 12 years old. Part of like awesome. FidoNet. It was called Stimulus BBS here in Vegas. And I went to work for a small computer store when I was 16, worked there for about a year and a half. And the owner decided to shut it down. He was a professor at the local university here in Las Vegas, wanted to focus on his teaching. He was also a magician on the Strip. And I went home to my.
If you're in Vegas, don't you have to be a magician on the Strip?
I think so. We have to have our side jobs, right?
That's right.
So I went home to my dad and my brother and said, "Hey, we can do this." My dad had a background in business, and my brother and I were in school for computer science, and so we started a little computer shop in my brother's garage. I was 17, he was 24, and that's how we started. So it's grown from, just building computers and helping friends and family with their IT needs to, a company in 5 states and almost 100 employees. And, obviously we've changed a lot over the 29 years that we've been in business. Now you can do the math and figure out how old I am. And, it's definitely, the industry has dramatically changed in the years that we've been in business, but we still have the core values of helping companies, succeed with technology and, grow their businesses through technology leadership.
So this is awesome, because rarely do you hear the story of a high-tech startup that's lasted over 30 years. Right, especially starting in someone's garage like you have. And the only stories we ever hear are the Hewlett Packards that started in a garage, but not a mid-sized company like this. This is great because you took a love and passion that you had for something and turned it into your livelihood and continued to be your passion. I can tell. I love it. I think it's wonderful. But let's dive into, things have changed a lot over the last 30 years, specifically around cybersecurity, because I started pretty young too. I got my first computer when I was like 10 or 11, and it was an IBM System 3, believe it or not, because it was my dad's from his dental office, and he brought it home, and it was the size of a car, basically, a small car. And and I worked on that. I had a blast. So you had to use programming to do anything. I had 11-inch floppy drive, right, to do things. It was crazy, right? But security back then was easy because
Yeah,
it wasn't connected to anything, right? And then we started connecting to things, and I got in trouble for hacking when I was a teenager on some BB some bulletin boards, right? Um, that I hacked into. It wasn't yours, thank goodness. It
that's good.
was some other
It's
one that I got.
probably to get a free video game or something like that. You're trying to
Yeah,
download something.
exactly.
Yeah,
But cybersecurity and everything's so connected now, and there's a lot of really bad actors out there now. It's changed and getting more and more sophisticated. So, how in the world, if you're a CIO or even a CISO, how in the world do you handle all this change? And then we've got zero trust thrown into this, and so how do I sort through all of that
it's tough because it's
noise?
a moving target, right? And you don't always have buy-in from the leadership of the company because the company wants to focus, or the CEO or the operations want to focus on the business and growing the business, and they look at often, unfortunately, they look at security measures as holding them back. It's the brakes to the technical operations of the company. Um, but the interesting thing is I've heard this analogy and I really like it, is the fastest cars have the best brake systems on them. They put these tremendous
Yeah.
braking systems so that they can go fast. And that's important to realize, is having this philosophy that security is essential to the protection of the company and the livelihood of the company. It does take leadership buy-in across the entire organization. And the companies that are most successful with this, it's a top-down approach, not a bottom-up approach. And it's got to come from, if you're a publicly traded company and you have a board, it's got to come from the board and the C-suite, all the way down to the person working the manufacturing floor or working the retail store, or whatever it may be. It's got to be top down and bottom up.
So it sounds a lot. It sounds a lot like what you hear in manufacturing around safety first. Those companies that focus on safety find that they can produce higher quality, safer products over time, and the cost is not exorbitant. So you're saying basically the same thing with security. If you bake it in up front and you have this security first concept, then the manufacturing of your products, which could be digital products or not, then kind of just fits into into that mold, and without a huge increase in cost. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And even if you are trying to, let's say you skimp on some security, or you don't want to implement some systems, just one breach will override any cheaper product or cheaper vendor, or lack of solution. One breach will wipe out any fiscal gains that you might have thought you had. Even if the insurance company takes care of it, I mean the black eye that comes from a publicly known breach is can be destructive on the business.
Well, not to even mention the downtime that you have from a breach as
Yeah,
you
for
clean
sure.
it up, right? So why is it then that you think that the C-suite has such a hard time investing in cybersecurity? Is it because it's unknown, it's too costly? What do you think the key impediments are there?
I think there's several things that I get a lot, and most of the customers that we deal with are lower middle market companies, and so they don't have a CISO or maybe even a CIO. It's usually maybe a
It's
small
Uncle
IT
Bob.
department. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Uncle Bob or an outside IT department, or just one IT guy internally. And what I find is, they look at security and IT in general often as just a cost center, just another line item. And And a lot of companies are getting forced into implementing some of these security things begrudgingly. Whether it's a compliance, framework that's being forced on them, and they're doing it, and they just look at it as a cost, and it amazes me. Like, we have. I'll just use an example. Some car dealerships that we work with, and a big change in their industry is the FTC recently said that car dealerships are basically banks because they're helping companies or helping individuals
Hmm.
finance their vehicle purchases. And so they're liable under the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. And so car dealerships have to implement FTC safeguard rules similarly to what banks have to implement. And what I find is in these smaller dealerships, that they're very frustrated by it. They just want to sell cars. That's the answer I give, from the executives. We're not in the IT business. We just want to sell cars and we want to service cars. And then you have something like what went down with CDK outage a few months
That's
ago.
one
That
nice way of saying it, Nathan. Now
Yeah,
it's
yeah. So, they were breached, and 15,000 car dealerships couldn't sell, service, deliver anything with their vehicles, and a lot of them were down for almost a month because of that breach. And CDK, again, there's a lot of finger pointing there that they weren't investing in their infrastructure. It was the cheapest option in the industry for dealer management system. And there were several dealers that were also breached as part of it, because they had VPN access into these individual dealerships. So it's just a confluence of, I think, bad security that went on there, and bad IT investments. But even after that, I see these dealerships that are still begrudgingly thinking that they have to implement the bare minimum of security, and it's just not enough. And so it is frustrating dealing with owners and executives of the business that look at this as just a cost center. And I personally believe that companies that implement the right solutions, like you mentioned just a second ago, the safety first, that implement that are far more successful of businesses than those that don't. We consult with about 800 companies across all our regions, and we look at competitors. We do service for competitors of each other, and companies that focus on implementing the latest IT solutions, implement the best security, are often growing and are much better off as a company than those that don't. It's very
interesting. Why
interesting.
would you? Why do you think that would be the case?
I think it's a culture thing inside the company. It's not just IT solutions, but it's an innovative culture inside those businesses, across the board. And so, employees are more productive. Employees are happier. Often the clients are happier. That their service is stickier with their clients. And so as I mentioned, it's like an overall culture shift inside the company, and it makes a huge difference across the entire board of the service that they offer.
So that's interesting. That would be really that'd be. It sounds like a PhD dissertation right there. Is there a correlation between adoption of cybersecurity best practices and productivity optimization in a company? Because I like what you said there. Companies that are more innovative are going to adopt technologies more readily, and that makes their customers happier. And there's a lot going to it. Do you ever think there'll be a time when um, companies are going to come out and say, "I am like ISO 9000. I am NIST. I'm NIST compliant." Or with my security best practices. I know the insurance companies require certain things, but those are checklists. But do you think that cybersecurity and protection of data will come to the point where customers are going to care about that, or not? Because we've seen
I,
so many data breaches this last year alone that it's like, oh my goodness, what?
I think I think it's going to be required more, and I'll give an example. You know, we work with different industries, and one of the things that we have to do as a managed service provider is ensure that our services are secure and that we're offering secure services to our clients. And so one of the things we have to do often with our vendors, security vendors and just general vendors, is request compliance frameworks that they're abiding by. And I'm recommending to our clients to ask the same thing, especially in light of the CDK breach. Is requesting what are they following NIST 2, or are they SOC 2 compliant, or whatever it may be that would be essential to that operation. And I think more and more companies are going to be asking those questions, and I'm recommending people ask those questions too. What are the backup policies and data retention policies of the client data for these cloud vendors, for example? That's also a concern. Is there a way to get the data out? Again, not to harp too much on the CDK breach, but wouldn't it have been better if there was a way to take that data to another data center? If the clients had access to it to start operations again. So I think companies are going to have to start asking these questions of their vendors more and more. I think customers are going to ask those questions again of the companies that they're doing business with, and vice versa. So especially if you're in a larger space, if you're going after bids or contracts that require it. I think it's interesting, like the Department of Defense is requiring the CMMC now as a compliance framework for their vendors. Right. It's been put off for years, but it's finally coming to fruition. So I think to win contracts and win deals now, people are going to start asking those questions or demanding it to ensure that security is in place.
Okay, so here's a big question, a little shift here. If I'm a small business, mid-sized business, maybe 50 people, maybe 100 people, maybe it's a dealership, and I've just gone through a breach. I understand. I'm kind of in shambles a little bit. What's my first move? How do I change from, I want to change, right? Because I just got breached. What's the most effective way to move forward, right? Instead of I'll just buy a bunch of tools. We know that's not. So
No.
What do I need to do to move forward? How do I change? Because you said culture's king here, it sounds like. So what do I do? Help me out.
Yeah, it's got to shift to that security first mindset of realizing that I can't have any operations today in 2024 without IT infrastructure working efficiently. And the leadership of the company has to take that position that our IT infrastructure has to always work. We can't get to 100%. We understand that, but we got to get as close as possible to 100% uptime. And the leadership of the company has to decide, okay, that's a position we're going to take as an enterprise. What systems do we need to put in place that work for us today? Obviously a company that's 50 or 100 employees, they have a certain level of investment they can do. If they're a $10 million a year company, they're not going to be able to put $5 million worth of annual IT expenditures, in place. Yeah. So it's got to be, realistic in budget. But it's got to, again, that mindset is our technology infrastructure is what drives our business today. And I got to protect it at all costs to ensure that I can stay in business tomorrow. So with that mindset going forward, I think having a guide or some experts to help you along the way, rather than just buying a bunch of tools, which is what we often, companies often do is, they get an insurance attestation that says, oh, you need to buy an EDR. Okay, do we have an EDR? No, let's go buy the cheapest EDR we can find, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so rather than just checking the box, is consulting and saying what is the best solution? Is there a software package that works best in our environment, works collaboratively with the other systems that we have, and then put this together as a whole package, so that it is manageable. When there's alerts or issues, that there's a team that can resolve those quickly, because time is of the essence, right? With any of these things, and building this infrastructure. So I think you have to, rather than just buying tools, you have to have a team in place to assist you with that. And if you're a lower middle market company or an SMB, a small business, there's no way that you're going to build that internally. You have to go to a company to assist you with that process. And it's not exorbitantly expensive. It's not going to cost you 10% of your gross revenues. But I think spending, somewhere between 3 and 5% of your revenues on IT is a legitimate budget today. And that's what we're seeing, is kind of the dollar amount that you have to spend, and then backstop it with insurance. I preach on this a lot. Is again, can't get 100%, and the only way to cover that 0.001% that we
Is
can't
through insurance.
guarantee, yes, or insurance, and having real insurance in place that's going to protect you in the event of an attack or a breach.
So how do I find a good cybersecurity besides yourselves? How, how do I go out there and even, if I'm a small mid-sized business, I probably did IT, my son or my cousin or someone did IT for me. Where do I start? Where do I go find people like that? I just search on the internet, security is us, or is there a place where these kind of companies hang out and I can learn more about it?
Sure. So if we're only so many markets, and we're happy to work with companies that are in one of the areas that we service. So you can look us up, Stimulus Technologies. But we do have a partner network of companies that we refer people to. So if you are interested, I have plenty of great companies that I'm personally aware of, and I can refer you to those. And then go to Google search and look at reviews. You can also go to vendors. I mean, I just got a report. Gartner just put out their quadrant of top vendors for security again. And maybe look at one of these top platforms and say who's a partner in your area, and maybe contact 2 or 3 of those partners. We get referrals from our vendors periodically that they contact the security vendor, and they say, well, we won't sell direct to you, but we'll work with this company,
Which you
and they
could
can.
sell through.
Yeah,
Oh, I like
yeah.
that. So it's a big referral based business and things like that. All right, back to the leadership side of this. How do I change my culture? We talked about changing process and bringing a security team in. How do I then affect that change in my culture? You have any tips there? Or do I rely on someone that I'm consulting with to say, look, we're paying them 5% of our revenue. Everyone better jump on board. Or how do I approach that culture thing?
Yeah, it's the culture is an interesting word, and I like using it, but it is a nebulous word often.
Yeah, it
So
is.
how
Yeah.
how do you define culture in your business in general? What is business culture? And I give a presentation, like a 3-hour presentation to CEOs about this, and we talk about culture. And part of culture is setting a vision for the company, where you're going for the business. And part of that should be this security mindset. What that should be an element of it, that we're going to be a technology leader, or we're going to ensure that the livelihood of the business is sustained in different methods. So it should be part of the vision. But I think culture is how we operate day to day. And it isn't words that you put on the wall at the front entrance of your business or on your letterhead. It is really how people act day to day inside the company. And so you have to change the behavior of the individuals. And I think the hardest one to change often from a security standpoint is the leaders of the organization, because they want they want to be the administrators. They want to have full access to everything, and they're often the first one that clicks on the phishing email. And so I think you have to,
Oh, that's awesome.
everybody's probably laughing at that because they have a boss that's the worst, that at it. And it's interesting because that is often the case, is the leadership of the company, are often, are least knowledgeable about these things. And so, day-to-day operations, they have to be the example of, strong leadership on technology and on security. And so, build it in through training mechanisms, through, policies and procedures across the business. I'm not saying you have to change your entire company in 1 month. I mean, this is an evolution that has to be consistent. But as you're doing, annual planning or quarterly planning, we're in Q4, and a lot of companies are going away and doing, quarterly planning or annual planning retreats. Take some time to say, okay, we're gonna invite in our experts. We're gonna invite in our IT director or our CIO or a CISO, or an outside consultant to come to talk to us about, do an assessment, see where we're at, and what in the next year should we implement to make improvements. And also, the other thing is review your vendors annually. If you are a CIO of the company, and you've been using the same vendor for security, review that. Are they the leader? Have they fallen behind? Are they implementing the latest AI technologies for detection? Constantly review what you're doing and making sure that you're buying from vendors that are top of class too. So I think, again, this should be a business discussion from the leadership. They should, look at this as an important piece of planning for the future, and constant reviews and constant improvement inside the organization.
So this most definitely is a tops-down culture shift that has to happen at the top. That's what it sounds like. And
That's my opinion on it. Yeah.
yeah, have you successfully helped companies through this transition, or you know
We have
what?
yeah, and I think one of the things that we do is quarterly planning meetings with our clients. At least sometimes they're monthly. That
Okay,
will meet with the executives of the company, review reports, review what things are going on, and help them plan for new implementations throughout the year. And sometimes it takes a little bit of shock and awe to have that
I was going to
discussion of
say.
sometimes it takes, like, you have this server environment that's now almost 7 years old. I know it seems like it's running fine, but what happens if XYZ occurs? And they realize, wow, we can't get any jobs out of the door, or we have to send employees home, or whatever it may be. And so asking those difficult questions, and then set plans in place, not requesting $100,000 today, but let's plan for that over the next 6 months or 12 months to do this this upgrade and implementation. But it does take some coordination, especially if you're working with an outside technology firm. Bring them into those leadership discussions so that they can help you make the best decisions.
This sounds a lot like risk management. So really, when you're out there, you're teaching these organizations how to manage risk, and coming up with a disaster recovery or business continuity plan that includes cybersecurity. That's what it sounds
Yes,
like to me.
correct.
This
Yeah.
is this is awesome. And it sounds like obviously you're doing well, because you've got 800 clients, and I think this is a really important part of our economy, the small to mid-sized business that goes underserved a lot of times, because a lot of security. We only hear the big breaches, the big hospitals, the big high tech firms that are main targets. But we're starting to see more and more small businesses, small communities being targeted as well. So, thank you for your work in that area. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Nathan, this has been wonderful. I love the approach. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate it. And if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and just want to throw this offer out there. If I've written a book to help executives understand technology and things that they need to implement, so happy to send out a copy to the book to anybody that connects with me on LinkedIn.
That sounds great. So they can find you at Nathan Whitacre on LinkedIn. And what's your website for your company?
It's Stimulus Technologies, and the website stimulustech.com.
All right. So there you go. There's your pitch, Nathan. And I look forward to taking a look at your book. This will be very good.
All right. Thank you, Darren. Appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.